Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Happy Wednesday. Today's August 17th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, after months of negotiations, President Biden signed a new act into law yesterday to help fight climate change. But how will healthcare costs be affected? We have that story for you, soulmates. Meanwhile, say her name. After months of unrest, a former Louisville police detective may plead guilty to a civil rights charges. That shooting, as you know, left Breonna Taylor dead during a no-knock warrant. Then, 2 cops charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in George Floyd's death are turning down a plea deal. We're going to have that story for you as well.
Plus, Mariah Carey's home was burglarized, and we have the details on that while she was on vacation. And Kanye West is called out by a shelter in L.A. for not keeping a promise that he made. We have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We start today with news on President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. It was signed into law yesterday. Democrats say the bill will fight climate change, lower health care costs, and raise taxes on corporations.
The bill I'm about to sign is not just about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about delivering progress and prosperity to American families. It's about showing the American and the American people that democracy still works in America, notwithstanding all the talk of its demise.
The House and Senate bills passed along party lines last week after Senators Joe Manchin and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer struck a deal after months of negotiations. Democrats now hope the legislation will help them in the November with the midterm elections. So the Biden administration is calling the Inflation Reduction Act a historic piece of legislation, and is emphasizing what it will do for the economic benefits that it will have on Black Americans. So it's going to lower prescription drugs for Medicare recipients, expand health care coverage, and make premiums more affordable for those on Medicare, which we know have been extremely hard, especially on our senior citizens. And so this is going to be a really good thing, and it will also provide up to $400 billion on climate change. And so there's some sort of rebate act that you're going to get as a as a homeowner. But a lot of critics are pointing out that the housing disparity for white and Black people are not equal. And so they're still questioning how this will eventually affect Black homeowners.
You know, I just want to, there's a story that everyone's been talking about recently, and it is about global warming in year 2053. So it's a story that's been circulating about in year 2053, which is about 30 years from now, which we will still be alive. Many of us will still be alive. And so we're going to, 48 different states are going to experience temperatures higher than 125 degrees, right? And so it's called a heat belt is what they're saying. And so I believe that when Trump was in office, he didn't make climate change seem as if it was a big of a deal as it really was. And so what's happening now is that global warming is a topic of discussion, is very important to people now because, for example, when Kylie Jenner, she was being called a climate criminal for taking 3-minute flights, all of that exhaust for a 3-minute flight that goes into the air, it is setting us back years and years. So things that we used to just laugh off, like, I don't really care about Kylie Jenner making a 3-minute flight, or I don't care about Elon Musk making a 3-minute flight, or global warming. Oh, that's something that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah.
And, it's now 30 years from now, we will be alive, and still 125 degrees is, then it starts going into, doomsday and Armageddon. People care now about global warming. And so I'm happy that Joe Biden is making it a number one ticking point, very important, because when you have millennials, you have the Gen X, they care about stuff like this. And they need to feel that when it's time to vote, their president cares about it.
Well, I think one of the phrases is timing is everything, right? This is happening right before the midterm, which is a huge, huge big deal. Hashtag BFD. If you're former President Barack Obama, you know what he meant by that. So it's coming in right on time for this, right? And when you talk about Trump, only thing he cared about was Trump, I felt like, when he was in office, and pushing all the wrong things. So yes, you mentioned that it's going for climate change, also enhance health care coverage. So that's also a big deal as well. So $430 billion, put your money where your mouth is. We are a country that loves out to help other people around the world. We've shown that with the war that's going on overseas. We have to put some money within our own country, and this bill does that.
Yeah, it's the biggest climate change bill we've ever seen. So, Demi, hopefully it will address a lot of what you were saying, and with that money set aside, they'll be able to look in some of those things and help prepare us so that in 30 years, at least they can ward off some of it. We probably won't be able to fight off all of it because we haven't been doing what we need to do in the past, but at least now we're focused on it, and so we can try and get there.
Mimi, because when you think about healthcare is something that affects you right now. Healthcare affects you physically, it affects you mentally. That's something that, okay, if you don't care about healthcare, boom, you're gone. But global warming is sort of abstract, that it hasn't affected us on such a deep level that people kind of have just been like, whatever about it.
At least they don't think that it's affected them, because it's hard for us to actually, it's not tangible, right?
Not tangible. That
so
is
it's
exactly.
hard to see it and touch it.
Feel it.
Yes, but it is affecting us. I mean, just even where I grew up in Alaska, the glaciers are melting. There was rocks of ice that are no longer there. So just there's just little things, and it's just a very important thing. So thank you, Demi, for pointing all of those things out.
And even my city of Chicago. You live. Your city is nearby, St. Louis. The city of Chicago is lowering 4 feet lower than it has like 10 years ago. And like again, 10 years ago doesn't seem like a lot, but the more it lowers, like it's just a lot. So I'm happy that we could, because global warming is one of those things that just like who wants to talk about it, but it really affects our everyday lives.
Because it's not always in the now, but it's our future that
Our
we need to be
future.
concerned about.
Absolutely.
We have kids. You're going to have kids one day, so we
Yes.
have to make sure the world is ready
Have
for them.
someplace to live.
Yes,
Yeah,
we need
exactly.
to be here, right? All right, soulmates, thank you for letting us have that very important conversation. Now, a federal judge will hear arguments tomorrow over whether he should make public the affidavit that lays out the evidence that led the FBI to search former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. Trump's lawyers want the evidence released, but the Department of Justice is asking the judge who approved the initial search warrant not to unseal the affidavit. They say that releasing it would compromise future investigative steps on active cases. Now, media outlets like the Wall Street Journal are also requesting the document be made public.
Lawyers for Brittney Griner are filing an appeal of her 9-year prison sentence for drug possession in Russia. The appeal comes as talks continue between the U.S. and Russia that could lead to Griner's release. Griner admits she had vape canisters of cannabis in her luggage when she was at Moscow airport back in February. The 9-year sentence Griner received was close to the maximum time she could have received. Griner's lawyer says her sentence was excessive compared to what most people who commit the same crime in Russia get.
And the walls are closing in on Donald Trump's election fraud allies. Rudy Giuliani is appearing in front of a grand jury today in connection with the election fraud case in Georgia. He was told by Georgia prosecutors this week that he is the target of a criminal investigation into election interference in the state. The news came the same day a federal judge rejected efforts by Senator Lindsey Graham to avoid testifying before the grand jury hearing in Atlanta. Now, Fani Willis and her team, they want to talk to Graham about the 2 phone calls he placed to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, shortly after the 2020 election. Now, Raffensperger says the senator asked him to help to invalidate certain mail-in ballots.
Now, a ghost gun maker is agreeing to pay Washington, D.C. $4 million as a part of a new settlement. D.C. Attorney General Carl Racine says that Polymer 80 had violated the city's Consumer Protection Procedures Act by selling and distributing illegal guns in the city. The company is banned from selling guns to customers in the city, including on its website. Now, ghost guns are untraceable weapons that have popped up in more and more cities around the nation.
Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is filing a lawsuit against State Attorney General Letitia James, says she improperly rejected his request for legal counsel in his sexual misconduct case. Cuomo's suit says James' denial of taxpayer funds being used to pay for his lawyers was arbitrary and contrary to state law. Cuomo was hit with a sexual misconduct lawsuit by a state trooper in 2021. James led a probe into allegations against Cuomo, releasing a report in August of last year. Cuomo resigned a week after it was released.
And a former Louisville police detective is planning to plead guilty to a civil rights charge stemming from the shooting that left Breonna Taylor dead. Kelly Goodlett is scheduled to be in court next week to enter her plea before a federal judge. Now, the former detective, she is expected to plead to 1 count of conspiring to violate Taylor's civil rights for helping to falsify an affidavit for the search of Breonna's apartment. Goodlett faces no more than 5 years in prison. And Taylor was shot to death during a no-knock warrant by Louisville police back in 2020. Taylor's boyfriend shot back when the door to the apartment was knocked down during the execution of the warrant. Like my mother always says, what's done in the dark will come to the light.
Yes.
And so it is about time that we are pulling back all the layers of everyone who had something to do with this. The thing is, though, I feel like had she not falsified the document in the first place, they never would have been able to get the warrant to go to the house. And so the fact that she's only facing 5 years seems a little problematic, just because she kind of set the whole thing in motion. So it was her and 2 other cops. They are now charged with the conspiracy to falsify documents, which allowed them to get the search warrant to go into Breonna Taylor's house. So she resigned from the police force 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago now, once these charges were announced. But it just says, had she not done this, had they not conspired to lie on the affidavit, maybe none of this would happen. And so I think we need to kind of look, and I know the Justice Department is doing the best that they can and charging the cops with what, and we are happy that we're getting some justice. But again, she set this whole thing in motion, and that's how I see it.
Mimi, the one thing that you said that is the most important part here is that peeling back the layers, because for some reason this case was so passionate, was so you could tell that there were holes in the situation. There was holes in every single part of what happened to Breonna Taylor, and so many people around the world, national outcry to prosecute the cops that are responsible for this, even down to Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General. Everything just did not add up from beginning to end. And so to know, I gasped, honestly, when I saw this, that like, whoa, this is actually groundbreaking to know, because it made you honestly realize, am I not seeing what I saw? Am I not? Because it didn't add up. So I'm so happy that, like you said, the layers are starting to peel back, because I was starting to think maybe it's something wrong with me that is not understanding what happened here, because for so long I'm like, what am I missing from this case? Because it never truly made sense all the way.
No, you think about, well, okay, what happened? It's unfortunate, but maybe it's just formalities that happened. But now that you think about it, someone had to sign off on it. Someone had to set this up. There were steps that were taken on what happened on March 13th. And we do know at the end of that night, a life was taken. And we've been saying her name ever since. So finally, we're getting some type of justice in this, right?
Yeah, much needed, for sure. 2 cops involved in the George Floyd killing are rejecting plea deals that would have given them 3-year sentences. Tu Tao and J. Alexander Kung are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in Floyd's death. They're turning down the deal, sets the stage for trial in October. They, along with Thomas Lane, were with Derek Chauvin as he pinned down George Floyd by his neck with his knee, therefore killing him. Another case that has had some holes in it, but with this case, we at least could see exactly what happened. There wasn't a lot of getting out of what happened, because we saw exactly what happened to George Floyd. Breonna Taylor, for example, we couldn't really see it the way that we saw it here. And of course, this is the case. We just have to wait and see how it all turns out. But of course the families don't get to get George Floyd back.
Yeah, listen, I don't know who was advising them to not take the plea, because I thought they got off pretty easy.
Agreed.
Getting 3 years. And so now they want to take it to trial. Listen, I think they deserve longer? Yes, but they should have probably taken the plea, because I don't see this going in a better way for them in October. I think people are still, sometimes things die down and feelings die down, but this case is still one of the things that really get people talking and really get that emotional feeling going. And so we'll see what happens, but I would have just kept to the plea if I were them.
I would have definitely done that too. And you think about like the time already served, right? So how much time do they actually have left, right? And then you think about Lang, who only going to get 2.5 years. He is the one officer that was saying, should I turn him over on his side? Right? So they try to give him a little leeway or give him a break, so to speak, on that. But I would have definitely taken the plea if I was those guys.
I've never, since probably OJ, to be honest with you, I've never watched a case and every single day of it and kept up with it. I've never done that the way that I did with George Floyd, honestly. And we were on Fox
results came out?
Absolutely. We were literally watching every single day. I've never done so much investigative reporting for a court case before as the way that we did for George Floyd. And the way that they broke that down, and his lawyers, the way that they, all of the emotions that all of the witnesses gave, I'm with you, Mimi. me, I would have taken it. Because now you're going back to trial. You're going to open up the wound, but more importantly, these people are going to yet come again and speak against how you killed this man in broad daylight, and it's not going to be good for them.
It's not going to be good. And then just sparing the family, the rehashment of the whole thing, right? It's just going to be so much. I don't know. I don't think whoever advised them that this was a good idea, they should probably fire them.
Agree. All right, well, the jury in the Chicago trial of R. Kelly kicked off in federal court this morning. A 30-year-old woman who was videotaped by Kelly when she was only 14 years old will testify in his trial. He was acquitted in her trial back in 2008 on child pornography, but there was another victim who was 16 at the time and did not testify. In this trial, Kelly is charged with child pornography and obstruction of justice.
Our position is we have a tainted jury pool. We start with a tainted jury pool. It's rather difficult to find people who have not received information, heard information about R. Kelly, and that really presents a challenge for us to try to get fair and impartial jurors, because it's not just a matter of people wanting to be fair and believing they can be fair. It's whether you're capable of being fair.
Kelly is already serving time for federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in New York. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison by a New York judge in that case.
And Sesame Place is implementing a diversity training program. By the end of September, employees at the Sesame Street theme park in Pennsylvania will be required to take classes to, quote, address bias, promote inclusion, and prevent discrimination. The training is developed by civil rights educators and will be integrated into the onboarding process for all new employees. It comes after a mother posted a video on social media last month in which her 6-year-old black daughter and her daughter's friend were snubbed by an employee at the park. The park is also facing a separate federal civil rights lawsuit from a black man claiming the character at the park ignored his 5-year-old daughter. The suit says that other black guests have had similar experiences.